a really
advanced
fancy
thing to do.
brooch on it or something.
Yeah, I think that's what it needs at the moment. I'm like experimenting with a stitch marker, which isn't very
Very glamorous.
cool. I'm afraid I'm very much not with the program. I'm on my Aldi knockoff lilt at the moment because it's very warm here today.
It's warm today, isn't it?
A few weeks ago, I was like, right, the sun's out, it's spring, it's time to do some sunny stuff. So I created a super duper
Wow.
orangiest, brightest.
Hello and welcome back to Tea with Betty. This is my second episode, and this week I spoke to Naomi from Skeinhawk Yarns. Now I actually had to speak to her twice because I forgot to put the microphone on the first one, so it recorded beautifully but with no audio. So we had to do a take two, so that's why I sort of mentioned that we've had to do it again whilst I'm talking to her. But I hope you enjoy the episode. It was lovely speaking to her. And here it is. So, shall we get into it then? So,
yeah, we'll be even more efficient this time, you see.
Exactly. Yeah, you know the answers now.
So I'm mucking about with this. I've literally took this straight off the blocks today and thought, oh, I'll try it on, but it's like such a weird shape. I'm sort of still trying to figure out how to style it. Sort of flapping about a bit.
It looks really cool. It's like a mini capelet or something.
Yeah, well, that's what I thought when I put it on. I was like, "Oh, this is cool." So I was like, "Oh, maybe I can like pin it so that it stays like that." But that was a bit of
a really fancy brooch on it or something.
Yeah, I think that's what it needs at the moment. I'm like experimenting with a stitch marker, which isn't very
very glamorous.
Cool. So yes, apologies if like my scarf just falls off halfway through, but yes, I thought I'd give it a go.
Well, shall we get into it? Yeah, so welcome back, Naomi. Thank you again for joining me. Again.
Thank you. How lovely to speak to you again.
And I've since we've spoken, I've come up with a new sort of pun for this section that I'm calling it Tea with Betty. So it's like a cup of tea, but also tea as in the gossip.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Well, I'm afraid I'm very much not with the program. I'm on my Aldi knockoff lilt at the moment because it's very warm here today.
It's warm today, isn't it?
It is, and I've been at work all day, so I've been over caffeinated as it is. So I'm afraid no tea for me tonight. Just sugar.
Right. So why knitting? So what made you go into yarn dyeing and start up Skeinhawk Yarns then?
Well, I've always knitted. That's not entirely true. I've sort of always known how to knit. My mum taught me how to knit when I was very small. I remember actually learning one summer holiday when I must have only been about 7 or 8, and she was determined to find something that I could do that wouldn't mean that I would stay out of the way while she could do the hoovering. And so as an 80s child, you know, there probably wasn't even anything on the telly during the day. So yeah, I remember her teaching me a few stitches, and that was it. I was off. But I sort of hadn't done it for a long time. And then, as with so many people's hobbies, lockdown came round a few years ago, and I was looking for sort of other crafty outlets. I do a lot of sewing. I've always sewn. But there was fewer and fewer reasons to be making things to go out in, really. And I enjoy sewing sort of vintage items and theatre costumes and things like that, and so that had sort of dried up a bit. So yeah, I got back into the knitting, and after a while I decided that I would tackle learning how to knit socks, because everybody says it's so difficult, and it turned out it wasn't. It was fine, and I flew, and I got very into knitting socks, and of course that opens up a whole world of yarn: striped sock yarns, variegated yarns, and of course hand-dyed yarns. And so one thing led to another, and I decided to have a go at dyeing my own. And because I've never tried a hobby that I haven't then turned into an obsession, I ended up doing so much that it became, friends were asking for it. I was dyeing more yarn than I could possibly knit, and yeah, it sort of got on a roll and ended up being a little business. So yeah, it's become what is now Skeinhawk Yarns. It's sort of grown quite organically, really, by just being something that I really enjoyed. I wanted to make and dye the yarns that I wanted to use, that were inspired by the things that I enjoyed, and it turns out there's a whole bunch of other people who like that too, so that's where it's ended up coming from.
Brilliant. And where did the name Skeinhawk come from then?
I'll be perfectly honest, it genuinely came to me in a dream.
That's amazing.
I've been spending ages trying to think. I think it was when I was first going to open my Etsy store, and I used to have, I had an alter ego. The old people like me who were on the internet since the before times.
Was it MySpace?
May have come across. No, I was on Etsy, actually, which is like the British version of Etsy. And I had I used to sew handbags and things made out of nerdy and geeky fabrics under the alter ego of Lima Lady. That was always my thing.
Hence the wallpaper.
I've even got a tattoo of one. They're just my thing. Just love Limas. So that was my handle for ages, and I thought, well, I can't still be that for the wool as well. It's going to be confusing. So I was thinking, what are things that are to do with skeins, and I wanted it to sound a bit rocky, and it was obviously just in my head. And I genuinely woke up one morning and I just had it in my head. I was like, Skeinhawk, that sounds cool. That sounds like something that you could see on like a rock t-shirt or something.
Yeah, it does sound like a really cool rock band.
Yeah, it just kind of stuck. So yeah, that's where it came from.
And how did you learn your dyeing skills? Are you self-taught, or have you had been on a course for that sort of thing?
Yeah, I'm self-taught. There's so many wonderful resources out there. There's various sort of YouTubers and things who do a lot to do with yarn dyeing. There's one called Chem Knits, which a lot of people may already be aware of. And obviously during lockdown, with a lot of extra time on my hands, I sort of researched the heck out of all this stuff and started experimenting, and spoke to other dyers. It turns out there's a wonderful community of dyers as well, just as there is with so many other hobbies. Yeah, everybody's always so helpful and so willing to kind of share tips and tricks, because there's room for everybody,
Oh, well, sometimes in some industries people get quite protective over their sort of how
yeah
they do it. So it's nice that there is that community, that everyone helps each other.
It is. It's actually part of what I really enjoy about it, and part of what's become so nice is that I've really, not just the knitters that I've come to know sort of in the virtual world with Instagram followers and on various forums and Facebook groups and things, but also the dyeing community. That sounds terrible, doesn't it? Dyeing. There needs to be a better word for it. It's like when you see sewer written down, it looks like sewer. It's like the verbal version of that. The dyeing with an E community is for the most part really, really friendly and supportive. And I think it's because there are so many ways and so many techniques and styles. It's a bit like if you had painters getting jealous because someone else was getting into painting, it's like, well, there's a million different ways that you can apply color to a canvas, and there's really is room for everyone. And yeah, I'm a big customer of other dyers, and other dyers buy from me, because we very often have our styles that we enjoy to dye, but then every now and then there'll be something that other people are great at that we don't particularly do ourselves. Like for me, I don't do a lot of solids colors because I just get too tempted to put more colors with them. I try to go and try and do one color, and then it just becomes more. But solids are fantastic for pairing with variegated yarns. So I very often buy my solid colors from other dyers and vice versa. So yeah, there's just a whole world of different styles out there, which means that it's just a really nice community, and there's always something to learn as well. Obviously, coming back to your original question of how I learned it, yeah, there's so many different tips and techniques and ways that you can do it. Once you start to play with it, you realize as well that there's this idea of acid dyeing, using powdered dyes that you can then make into solutions, or you can use them as powders and set them with heat. And citric acid powder is what I use. Some people use vinegar. But there's a whole, you can then get down whole rabbit holes of sort of, exactly when to put the dye in, at what temperature, and how much acid you add, because that will affect how quickly the dye strikes and what sort of effect you get and all of this. So yeah, trial and error is a big part of it as well, and just being willing to play. I think the only people who maybe could not, wouldn't be able to take to dyeing would be people who want to have a very, very predictable result every single time, because that's the one thing that you don't get. You can try, but it will constantly try and surprise you.
So I've since thought of an extra question since so what would you describe your style of yarns, like if you could sort of describe them? Like which colours?
Yeah, characterful, really. They're not for the shrinking violets, I suppose, out there. Bold is, I suppose, an overused word, and when you say yarns are bold, it tends to mean that they're always sort of very bright, and I love bright colours, but I also think that you can be very bold with something that is maybe a traditionally more ordinary colour. For example, this is probably one of the nearest things I get to a semi-solid, which is my woodsy coloured one called Into the Woods.
Ooh, oh, that's pretty.
Has about half a dozen different shades of green dye in it that then all mix together to make probably half a dozen more. And it's, even though, you could just say, oh, if you knitted this up, you'd make a green scarf. It would be quite a statement green scarf. People would notice it. It would be unusual. It would stand out. And that's what I like. I would say my style maybe is to make things that are fun to work with, but also, when you wear them, that you're wearing something different and it's unique. I don't make very many of any item at once. My batches are very, very small. So yeah, it's bold, it's fun, and yeah, something a bit different. I hope people find from my yarns.
And I think in the last interview that didn't record, you were saying how the process of the dyeing is very time consuming. So a lot of people don't realise how time consuming it is, and that's why sort of hand dyed yarns are maybe slightly on the more expensive side rather than more value side of things. So that was quite interesting to know about.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I was actually talking to somebody about this just the other day, not necessarily in relation specifically to yarn, but sometimes when you are particularly involved in a hobby area, knitting or dyeing or both, you sort of assume that everybody knows, for example, what hand dyed yarn is, how it's made, what makes it different to commercial yarns. But then you kind of realize that, a lot of people, and no fault of their own, may never have even encountered hand dyed yarns. They may only have ever knitted with the things that they see in the sort of small craft aisles in the supermarket or in Hobbycraft or something. So people don't really realize what sets them apart. So yeah, basically going from a sort of a bare skein of yarn to something like this can take, well, first of all, you have to soak it. So that can take anything from a few hours to overnight, because that opens up the wool and lets the dye in effectively when it's nice and wet. The dyeing process itself can take, depending on the process that you're using, It can take anything from an hour up to, some things may even need to sit and cool down overnight in order to, if you've got very bold colours, to make the yarn set, it has to set overnight. Then you've got a rinsing and drying process, and every single one of those is done by hand. So if you're very small scale, such as I am, I literally dye in my own kitchen. Everyone gets kicked out once or twice a week, mostly at the weekends, and I take over with my powders and potions. And I can, you know, if I'm flat out for a Sunday, I can do maybe 20, 25 skeins a week, and that's about it. And that's a really full-on day for me. So obviously, if for full-time dyers, and if you've got a studio, if you're doing larger, more replicable dyes, then more. But it's still, you know, it gives you an idea of what a scale it is.
Yeah.
And you know, every single color is mixed separately. It's then either poured or it's sprinkled, and it's stirred and watched and brought up to the right temperature. So yeah, it's, I suppose it's a little bit like you know, baking, I guess. You know, if you're baking a cake, it can take all afternoon to bake a fruit cake, but you know, it takes you 5 minutes to buy one from the shop, and that's you know, that's the difference, really. That being said, you know, I'm there is no yarn snobbery. There's room for all kinds in my stash. You know, I've got everything from sort of cheap acrylics with sparkle in that I've seen on offer in Hobbycraft or something.
Oh, I do love a bit of sparkle in.
I know, right? Why not? Through to, you know, a skein of cashmere that I'm too scared to use that I bought from some fair somewhere. So yeah, I would never. Well, hand-dyed yarn is a wonderful luxury, and I'm very pleased that people enjoy it. You know, I personally, I couldn't afford to only knit with hand-dyed yarn all the time, and that's if I did it at cost, you know. So I totally appreciate that it is a luxury, but like with many other things, you know, treat it as such. Treat yourself now and again. You know, even one skein, you can make so much out of it, and it's so rewarding knowing that this has gone from effectively sheep to scarf with attention being paid to it all the way through. I think that's really nice.
Yes, and a lot of love and attention goes into each hand-dyed skein. Yeah, it's good for people to know how the process works so that they know why something is the price point it is. But so how do you come up with a theme or colour combo for your yarns? How do they pop into your head?
They can happen. Sometimes the colours come first and then I match them to a theme. Sometimes it's the other way around. You know, sometimes I'll be like, at the moment I've been watching the Fallout series on Amazon. And that doesn't necessarily sound like something that would be very inspirational. It's a nice cozy yarn, it's a nice bit of post-apocalyptic yarn. But I'm thinking, I've been watching that and thinking, I want to do a vault coloured, you know, the blues and the yellows and things, and you know, I want to do some Fallout stuff. So the theme will inspire the colours for that, and I'm still sort of mulling quite what I'll do with that one. But then other times it may be for example, a few weeks ago I was like, right, the sun's out, it's spring, it's time to do some sunny stuff. So I created a super duper orangiest, brightest citrus.
It's very sunny, isn't it?
I could find one afternoon.
That's
I was like, right,
those what they called the fruit sherbet type sweets. Fruit. What are they called?
They're a bit like fruit salad.
Yeah,
but not,
fruit salad.
It hasn't quite, it's looking a little pinker probably on here than it is in real life. It's sort of slightly more, I guess it's the sort of coral toned orange almost, but it's really citrusy. It looks like sort of orange juice. Wow. And as I was making it, I was thinking, it kept popping into my head that orange mocha frappuccino line from Zoolander. So this ended up being a Zoolander themed skein, and it's called So Hot Right Now. Yeah, so that's where that came from. But yeah, they come from all sorts of crazy places inside and outside of the brain.
Yeah, I think that's what first attracted me to your yarns, because I think we bonded over the due south yarn.
Yes, Yes, exactly. I've never yet met a theme that I couldn't try and make a yarn that matched it. You know, that's I enjoy a challenge. And yes, 90s a 90s TV series about a Mountie and his wolf fighting crime in Chicago. Boom, I'm on it. I want the yarn to match.
Still don't know what to make with that. It's like my hallowed yarn. I don't want to like ruin it. I want to knit something really special with it.
I love seeing what people make, especially with the Yarn Club yarns, because so often I get people who don't even knit that have come across that and have been like, right, this is the thing that's going to start me knitting, because you know, for whatever reason, that theme, you know, be it Due South um, or I don't know, Bridget Jones or whatever, that film or TV thing, whatever, is something that is close to them. They've maybe and so they. Oh, you're back. You froze.
Yeah, I froze. Sorry.
Oh, it was
my internet connection is unstable.
Oh no.
Right, I think we're okay now. Sorry, we will carry on. So it's probably a good place to tell us what are your current ranges, sort of what monthly clubs do you do, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so yeah, my monthly clubs have really taken off. They were something that I started doing just as a little sort of partly as just a fun thing to challenge myself, because making a new colorway every month, or at the moment 2 new colorways every month, effectively based on a brief, is a fun challenge, and it sort of keeps my brain going. And every time I make one, it often sort of kicks off inspiration for a bunch of others that then become other stuff in the main range. So yeah, but it's gone from strength to strength, and I now have 2. I have a 90s night in club, which is all based around TV and films from the 90s.
Yep. I'm very tempted by the Sabrina, the Teenage Witch one.
That struck a chord. People love Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Original, not the new one, the original.
The original. Although I was quite fond of the new one too, I have to say.
Oh,
it wasn't
it was a very different vibe, wasn't it?
But yeah, I last year I was doing I did a guilty pleasures movie club. So every month was a film that is, you know, probably you wouldn't admit on Desert Island Disc was the one that you'd take, but it probably is the one that you actually would. You know, no one's actually going to take Citizen Kane with them, are they? They're going to take, you know, Zoolander or My Girl or something. So that was fun. But it turned out that from that there was a whole bunch of people. The crossover, and I shouldn't be surprised. It's, you know, 40-something nerds. The crossover between knitters and people who think very nostalgically of the 90s is quite strong. So I ended up pandering to that, and I've done a whole year of it this year of 90s film and TV that we love. So yeah, we have had Due South, we had Muriel's Wedding.
Oh yeah.
We've got Sabrina the Teenage Witch. We've got some big hitters coming up. It's not a huge spoiler to say that the X-Files will turn up at some point, probably Friends, but beyond that there's some big ones, but there's also some slightly more obscure ones like Due South, just to please the niche fandoms.
Although I think you found that you know, there are a lot of fans out there, aren't there?
There are. This again, I love this. When I did the Due South one, I had so many people coming out of the woodwork and saying, oh, I remember that. It was so good. I didn't think anyone else remembers it. And yeah, that's just it's a lovely knock-on effect of this whole thing. It's like the new little fan clubs popping up everywhere. I love it. So yeah, with that you get a themed skein of yarn. You can add a mini as well if you want, so you can make it into full sock kit. I have a lot of regular yarn clubbers who make socks every month with them, and a little gift, little sort of token gift that goes along with it, that I spend probably far too much time every month sourcing. I try and get stuff from other makers and people on Etsy, etc., if I can. But yeah, that's really good fun to put together. And then the other one I have on a slightly more sensible note is called Twisted Tales, and that is based around folklore of the British Isles, which is another thing that I really enjoy. And so every month with that one, it's a story. It may be a myth or a legend. It may be a well-known one like the Loch Ness Monster, or it may be a less well-known, just sort of local story. Like last month, we had the Madmen of Gotham, which is a sort of a apocryphal local story about a small village in Nottingham. But they're all hopefully entertaining. Hopefully people learn a little bit of something, and have fun collecting them. And every month I do some research and I write up a little presentation chapter about the story, or the animal or the myth or the legend that we're looking at. And you also get a little themed stitch marker. So people who've been with it the whole year will have a full collection by the end of the year. As well as your themed yarns. And so obviously that one, the colours for it tend to be a little more sort of on the woodsy, natural side, and the 90s ones on the whole are going to be brighter, but there are some surprises on each side, so you never quite know what you're going to get, which I know a lot of people don't like, mystery yarn too much. They like to know what they're getting, and that's absolutely fine. I appreciate that as well. But yeah, I'm surprised by the number of people who just really love to see something popping through their letterbox at the end of the month that
it's a nice little surprise.
Yeah, and touch wood, I haven't had anybody, well, nobody's told me they've been disappointed by it yet, and a lot of people come back for more. So
so you're doing something right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now that people have got your yarn, perhaps, are there any particular designers or knitwear designers that show off your yarns perfectly, or who's your favourite knitwear designer?
Well, I'm a terrible magpie for designs. I my sort of Ravelry to knit list is massive. I just save things here and there wherever I see them. But I'm particularly like one skein wonders, as I would call them, that show off a single skein of yarn, because obviously so many of my yarns are very highly variegated. I think a lot of people are not quite sure what to do with variegated yarn, because if you do a larger item, try knitting a jumper out or something like this, probably look pretty cool, but it would be very difficult to get enough skeins together to alternate them and make it look harmonious. So I'm all for one skein wonders that show things off. There's a brilliant designer that I've worked with before called Suzanne Elsmore. She also goes by the name Gone AWOL. I love a pun, so I approve of that. It's probably how I found her in the first place. And she does a lot of one skein sort of bandana style shawls that I absolutely love. They're really nice to knit, and they use almost exactly a single skein of 4-ply, and they show off a variegated yarn absolutely beautifully, and they're very easy to wear. So I've made quite a few of hers, and you'll find them on several of my listings. Have my samples are these sort of bandana shawls, so they're great if you're looking for a nice beginner one. Head off there. And she also offers lovely pattern support as well. She's really, really nice. So yeah, they're brilliant. If you want something a bit more advanced, there's a designer called Brona Ms. Kelly. I may have mispronounced her name. I should have found out how to say it since Saturday when I last said I mispronounced her name, but she's wonderful. She often has patterns published in Knitting Magazine, and she does a lot of very, very wearable jumpers and cardigans, but also beautiful lace work. She has a lot of shorts with sort of leaf patterns and things in them. So if you're looking for something a bit more challenging, something lacy, again, mostly for the 4-ply yarns, they're really, really nice. And I've got a few of them on my list to crack on with one day. But yeah, I've also just very recently finished this, which is a
so gorgeous
shawl, Pincha. That it's actually free. If you just Google it, it's a free pattern.
Wow.
It's on Ravelry, but it was also, I think it was originally published on a knitting website, like a Knitting Magazine's website, as a free pattern. I can't remember offhand which one it is, but it's quite a popular pattern on Ravelry and stuff. It's quite easy to find. Yeah, it sort of knits up into, I can't take it off because I've pinned it on right now, but it knits up into these lovely feathers, and each one, I finished this on Sunday. I did 24 feathers.
Oh wow.
And I had the tiniest bit of yarn chicken tail left at the end, so I can personally vouch that this takes exactly one skein of 4-ply yarn. So yeah, that's a great one as well. Again, very easy if you want to practice some short rows, but also just use up your, one skein of something beautiful that you've bought either from me, hopefully, or someone else. It's a wonderful one for showing off things like that. So yeah, that's my current favourite.
Give that one a go.
Yeah, I kind of want to cast another one on immediately. It's so nice.
Got the Elvira.
Lovely.
My camera is terrible. It's not showing it very well.
Oh,
I think that would look really good.
So pretty, though I say so myself. Although looking at that then, as you picked it up, I think it was my camera, like the artifact on the camera made it look almost sparkly. And so that's made me go, oh, I want to do a sparkly version.
Ooh, that would be good.
Oh, nice.
Take all my money.
Note yourself.
So
yeah, I love that you're making a Lost Souls shawl with that. I think that's
going to so cool, that pattern.
It's what Elvira would have wanted as well.
Exactly.
Just like this. I mean, this is made from my yarn called Halcyon, which is kingfisher coloured. So that's why I wanted something with feathers on it. So again, you can take your yarn and continue the theme.
Yeah.
If you want. Which is always fun.
So we've got about 8 minutes left. We might just get this in.
Be more concise this time.
I think actually that might be everything. I suppose. What is your like #1 piece of kit that you couldn't live without in your knitting kit?
Ooh, that's a good one. I've recently, this sounds like I'm doing a plug for myself, which I am a little bit, but I actually do these. I sell on the website these tiny little tins of stitch markers. They're about yay big, and I have sticker designs on the top of them, and it's like a TARDIS for stitch markers. I can put so many tiny stitch markers in there, and I just keep adding to it, and I don't know why it's not getting full. But before that, I had stitch markers everywhere. They were all over the place, and I absolutely love it. And I've now started getting more of those and just repurposing them for other little things. So that's one of them. But also, I am a big fan of, on a larger side, I recently bought I upgraded my circular needles, and I bought a Lantern Moon set, which is a fancy brand. And I basically treated myself to them. I had an Amazon voucher. And I absolutely would not be without them now. I've realised that actually it's one of those things, investing in a decent set. If you're umming and ahhing over interchangeable circular needles, go for it. It will change your life. I haven't knitted on straight needles for ages now, even flat things, because the interchangeables are so great. And if you're struggling with them and you've just started with cheap ones, treat yourself if you can afford it. Get yourself some nice, decent quality ones. I had Knit Pro before. Knit Pro are great. The metal ones, they're lovely. But my problem with them is I knit in the evenings and I knit on the sofa, and the Knit Pro ones and the metal ones click. And I always find that I'm probably being really annoying to my poor partner who's sitting over there trying to watch the TV. So I now use almost exclusively wooden needles. And these new Lantern Moon ones, they are, I don't know if they're actually ebony, but they're quite heavy, sort of solid feeling wood, even though they're very, very slim, and they've got a lovely point on them. And they've got the cable swivel. Game changer. No more getting tangled up or having your cables flopping around. So yes, that's
because I find the very cheap circular needles, the plastic, like your knitting catches on them, so it's worth investing in a nice pair that the stitches glide over smoothly.
It was driving me mad with my previous ones because they were getting a bit old and snaggy. So yes, I treated myself, and I see it as an investment because they will, they've already done several million hours of knitting probably since I got them a few months ago. So yeah, it's worth it. But yeah, and it's also something I would say to people who have started, if a tip for people who are starting knitting, and you know, if they're not getting on with it for whatever reason, there's so many different ways to do things and different equipments. You know, I've known people who have really struggled with knitting because they were using, you know, people think that you have to start by knitting a scarf out of something very, very cheap on very, very cheap needles, and then they find that it's splintery and difficult and squeaky and they don't get on with it. Experiment, try other stuff, borrow some needles off someone else if you can. If you don't like, if metal needles hurt your fingers, try wooden ones. You might find that they're more forgiving. If you find the wooden ones, you grip them too tightly, go back to the metal ones. Yeah, there's a million different ways to do things. And yeah, don't push on, really.
Always use the good yarn.
Always use the good yarn. Yes, absolutely.
Never save it, because you can end up with like a pile of good yarn that you never use, but
totally.
use it.
Use the good yarn and treat yourself to the good needles, because you know, if you're doing hundreds of hours of knitting, you want to have the good stuff to do it with, because you're worth it, like the advert.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's probably a good place to stop then. Thank you very much for answering all my questions again.
Thank you. I probably came out with completely different answers this time as well, so
I think I thought of a couple of extra questions. So I suppose very quickly, the last question is, where can people buy your yarns? Do you sell in shops or?
Currently, I am only online. If you head to skeinhawkyarns.co.uk, or you just put in, I'm, as far as I know, the only Skeinhawk anywhere. So if you Google it, you'll find my Instagram and everything as well. I'm on Instagram, on Facebook, I've got a newsletter, all of that. I occasionally will do local pop-ups. I'm based in Kent, and my local yarn shop in Faversham, I've occasionally done a few pop-ups in there. Hopefully I might do some more there in the future, or possibly some other local shops. Watch this space. I don't really get to do the yarn shows, unfortunately, because there would not be enough hours in the day, because
no, they're exhausting.
Yes, they are exhausting, and this is for my sins not my full-time job. So unfortunately, apparently I have to make time for like my partner and cleaning the house and things like that as well. I can't just do wool all the time.
Damn them.
So yeah, I have to have a bit of time off. So yarn shows not yet, maybe in the future, who knows. But yeah, for now I'm always online, and yeah, also people can always drop me a line on any of those places as well. If they want any advice on wool, if they're not sure how to get started, if they need a pattern, give me a shout. I love helping people to get started with, and inspire people to get started with wool as well, and with knitting and crochet as a hobby. So yeah.
I know what I didn't ask. What's your favourite base to dye?
Probably my luxury sock. I do an 85% merino, 15% nylon, which is what my yarn clubs are in. So that's what you've been using there with the Elvira. And I just do everything with it. It's lovely to dye. It takes colour brilliantly. And it's super soft, but also quite strong. So you can make socks and things with it. And it's just really versatile. I love 4-ply. I do almost everything in 4-ply. If I start knitting anything in DK, I feel like it's gigantic. So yeah. That's probably my favourite, and it's my most popular as well. So yeah,
nearly froze again there. Right. I think that is my actual final question. So wow. I'll pop all of your details in the comments for people so they can find you online. Thank you so much to Naomi from Skeinhawk Yarns. I hope you go and check out her website. She's got some fantastic ranges and uses really bright and colourful dyes. So there's bound to be something for everyone. I'm really excited to see her Sabrina the Teenage Witch range. I haven't bought it this time. I may regret that. But I have a lot of yarn, so we shall see, hey. But yeah, go and give her some love on Instagram as well. She's really great, and yeah, we bonded over due south, which was a fantastic range of yarns that she did, so definitely check her out. I've got a very exciting guest coming on the next episode, which will probably be filming today my lovely workstation here that I bought, which doubles up as a yarn store. So keep checking back for more videos, and I will see you very soon.